Hello and welcome. My name is Walid Mehr. I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer here to walk through the Microsoft SC-300 Identity and Access Administrator Associate course with you. Have you ever wondered where cloud applications safely store their secrets, encryption keys, and certificates? Imagine a digital vault locked, monitored, and accessible only to those you trust. That's Azure Key Vault. In this session, you'll discover how Azure Key Vault helps you secure sensitive information, control access with precision, and automate secret management for your apps and services. Get ready to unlock the secret of secure cloud operations and see how Key Vault can become your organization's security cornerstone. Let's get started. For this part of the session, let's go through Azure Key Vault by using a demo. Well, for this, first of all, I'm landing into my portal.azure.com and I'm going to start looking for Key Vault. And let's start creating one for this demo. For now, let's go ahead and hit create and we'll start creating a new Azure Key Vault. And we'll drop this into our SC-300 resource group. Now, the name that I'm going to use for this Key Vault, let's call this Key Vault 1. And again, a better name convention would be nice. Oh, I already have Key Vault 1. Let's try something different. Let's try my Key Vault 1 for apps. Yeah, that's just the name that I'm coming up with. All right, surely you can come up with a better name. I will drop my resource in UAE North just for now, and I'll use a standard tier for this. Now, there is a premium tier available for Key Vaults. If you're looking to manage any hardware-based keys, if that's what you need in your organization, you'd need a premium tier for this Key Vault to work. For this demo, I'll use a standard tier for me to work with. Now, as part of the setup, there are some other security features that are by default enabled. So I have a soft delete that's enabled for this. That's good to know that if something gets deleted by default, it will be retained for 90 days and I can recover that back from there. Also, there is another security feature that I can enable, which I recommend you should, looking at purge protection, which means if this is enabled, no one will be able to delete this particular resource in your environment. And again, it will enforce that it is retained for a particular period of time in your environment. Now, just for this demo, I'll leave this off, but a very important feature to consider if you're implementing this for your solutions in your environment. Now, apart from just the basic tab, we do have some access configurations that I can choose based on what I'm defining my Key Vault for. Typically, in the past, you would have seen only one option for Key Vault, and that would have been creating access policies for Azure Key Vault. Now, for a while, we have introduced another feature which is recommended to use, which is creating RBAC control onto creating my Azure Key Vault. Now, if you haven't seen one of my previous videos where we discuss what RBACs are and how you assign permissions, please have give it a quick watch, which will explain to you on how you assign different roles. And we'll discuss some more roles to do with Key Vault in a short while. Now, for now, I'll leave this as a standard setting to allow me to access this Key Vault based on RBAC roles. Again, you could have used it for access policies, but we'll leave it at for now, and we'll start working with this as a RBAC resource. Now, within my setup, I can also define under networking if I want to enable public access to this Key Vault. Typically, if you're creating a secure version of the Key Vault, you don't necessarily want internet access directly from to this Key Vault. You don't want random or malicious actors trying to gain access to it. So for that reason, you might not want that to happen. If that's the case, simply switch that away to selected networks, choose particular network settings that you might want within your environment, what networks can gain access to this Key Vault, and restrict access over the internet. Just for this demo of today, we'll leave this open to all networks so we can configure that and leave the other networking settings which are not needed for this course. Now, I'm good to go. I can simply hit create and review, and this is all I need to do to create an Azure Key Vault in my environment. And once this is ready, we'll start configuring some details within it. So let's go into the Azure Key Vault that we just created called KV1 apps. So that's what we have created, the name that we came up with. Now my Key Vault is ready to go. Typically, what kind of resources does this Key Vault manage for me? Ideally, I can drop in looking at encryption keys. I can look at creating secrets in here, and I can look at managing certificates in here as well. Now, typically, I should be able to go in here, click on my keys, and I should be able to go and hit generate and create some, add some details in here, or go into secrets and simply hit generate and start creating some of these resources. However, before I do that, just take a step back out. It says the operation is not allowed by RBAC. Now, RBAC, role-based access control, suggests that currently I don't have the right permissions on this Key Vault to do anything. Now, what kind of permissions would I need? And that's an interesting topic to look at. Let's quickly jump onto the slide deck and talk about different roles that are available in Azure for me to manage my Key Vault. There's quite a few different roles available for me to look at. Typically, you can start off with Key Vault administrator role. Now, this is where you could assign someone who needs full access to manage anything and everything that's going on inside your Key Vault. And again, this is something that you would assign to a person that needs to do all different or work within all different areas in the Key Vault. Now, ideally, you need to make sure that you're still following zero trust principles of least privilege access and giving just enough access to people to be able to work within your environment. Now, if that is the case, I should be looking at particular or specific roles that I might need to assign to different people based on what they need to do with this Key Vault. Now, if they're looking just to be able to gain access to a particular encryption key that I have got, maybe I can look at a role like a Key Vault certificate officer or maybe a crypto officer. Again, depending on the type, if I want them just to be able to read the metadata, I can change the role to a Key Vault crypto service encryption user and allow them to look at wrapping and unwrapping operations of that key when it is in use. Or I could simply go into giving someone a Key Vault reader where they should be able to read all the details that I have in my current Key Vault, but they can't typically go into sensitive part of the data. They can't see the actual values of the resources that are there. Typically, if you're creating a secret, they won't be able to click the secret to see what's the secret password or word that you've created in your environment. Now, if you really want to do that or give someone ability to do that, maybe a Key Vault secret user should be the role that you assign to them so they can read the secret content that's assigned to them in your environment. Now, just for this part, I am going to simply go into creating or assigning myself a role. I will give myself the Key Vault administrator role just so that I can manage all different aspects while I'm performing this demo. But in real scenarios, typically you wouldn't need to do that. Now, one thing to point out over here is that the Key Vault administrator role, if it's assigned, it can't manage Key Vault resource or manage role assignments. Even though they have the administrator role for the Key Vault, they can manage everything inside of the Key Vault, but not on the Key Vault. So any permissions around giving others role access and stuff like that, that won't work or won't be able to perform by someone who has the Key Vault administrator role. Now, let's jump back onto the portal. Let's have a look at some role assignments on the Key Vault. All right, I'm back into my Key Vault, and all I'm going to do is under the blade for the Key Vault, we're clicking on access control or IAM, identity and access management, and we'll simply go into roles over here and look for Azure Key Vault administrator. All right, maybe just separating that. All right, there we go. We have a Key Vault administrator role right here. So we are going to simply go in and assign that to myself. All right, let's jump onto assignments. Add an assignment. And select the member that we are assigning this to. That would be myself. And let's simply assign and review. Right, and that's me assigned a role within the Key Vault administrator. Now, if I go back into my secrets over here, I shouldn't see that pop-up menu or message that was coming up here before, suggesting that I need a particular role to be assigned before I can go and create any changes into this environment. Now, if I go into generate and import, and here I can see I have an option to create manual entries to this. Let's give this a name. Let's call this my server, or let's say app server access, and let's give it a detail over here. So this is my secret value that I need for logging into the app server. All right, and all I'm going to do is leave the activation and expiry dates alone for now. However, when you're looking to implement this in real scenarios, a recommendation is to implement them. This is again part of your zero trust, looking at the least privileged access. You are going to implement just-in-time control, and that is where you bring in the just-in-time for that. So have expiry for the keys. So again, or your secrets or your certs, so you know after a certain period, you need to refresh that just to make sure there isn't any malicious activity going on. Now, I'll leave this enabled for now, and I'll go ahead create for that for us. Now, this is as easy or quick as me creating an Azure Key Vault, assigning roles for myself to be able to manage different aspects of this Key Vault, and then going into the Key Vault and creating a resource or an object, either it's a key, an encryption key, a digital certificate that I'm maintaining in here, or creating a secret. Now, a question could be, how do I use this? I've created an entry in here and I've got a resource already, an object ready within my Key Vault. How do I connect this? How do I use this? Well, for that, let's start trying to do something slightly different. For this, I am going to go into my virtual machines, and within my virtual machines, I am simply going to start trying to connect to one of my machines called bserver1. Now, this is my app server that we are looking to connect into. Let me hide some of these blades so we have more space on the screen. Now, for me to connect today, I'm going to use a service called Azure Bastion, and I am going to start looking at the Bastion service to connect this to this virtual machine. However, typically I'm required to type in a username and password for this machine to log in directly. What if I don't want to do that? I don't want to keep on typing username and password for this. I could store this password for this machine in the Azure Key Vault, which we just have done. And I can simply come in here and say, hey, password is in the Key Vault. Go and claim that password from there, and it's going to ask me some more details. For instance, my subscription, the Key Vault that you have working. So the Key Vault we are looking at is called KV1 apps. So we're going to go pick it from there. Now, if I go into looking at my key, I have my app server access. That's the entry that we made for our application. And I am going to simply go and say connect. Now, what this has done is it's taken the key from the password from the Key Vault and assigned me in, without me having to provide the password to this, or having to type this over the web somewhere, or providing it to the application directly. I'm simply connecting to this resource by simply gaining access to a Key Vault and an entry that we created called App Server Access, and that is pulling that data from there. Now, if we go back to our Key Vault for a minute, just to see what we did, in the Key Vault KV1 apps, this is where we created the secret, and that's the App Server Access that we created. And if I go into that entry, so far I can see this is the entry that is created for it, and it's enabled. Now, it's got a secret identifier that's just over here, hidden away for me. So it's got a secret identifier that I can use to hook different resources to this. In my case, because it was within Azure, I could call out from there and start working with that. Now, there's a password that is hidden away right there. Now, if I wanted to see that password, I could click on that to see it. Now, remember, not everyone or all the roles in your environment should be able to see that. Typically, at a very minimum, you should be able to assign someone a Key Vault secret user so they can then see that password that's listed under here. Or for me as an administrator, I should be able to call that out and then see the password that's hidden away over here. Now, this is how you can use Azure Key Vault to link to different services and work with them. I hope this has given you a quick insight onto what Azure Key Vaults are and how you go and define different roles using RBAC into your environment, and then assigning access to resources using Azure Key Vault. This concludes our session. We encourage you to review the reference modules, check your knowledge with the additional study materials, watch other videos in this course, or search out your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.